Dungeon Master Hotline. How can I help you?
Hey,
Hey,
I got it figured out finally. There we go.
perfect.
I tried to let somebody go before me, and it seemed I got put back in the end of the queue. That's probably why.
Okay, yeah, you gotta let me. Like, if I try somebody and it doesn't work, I usually just stuff them back in there and wait to hear back later. Like, wait to
So, anyways, on to the actual questions.
hit me.
I got a level 9 group going on. There's about 6 of them. They've been running for about 6 months now. I've got a long story arc composed around one of the High Lord demons, Orcus.
Okay.
And he seems to be taking control of some of the elemental beings of the world. So I'm trying to get a lot of information out on them. I have a bunch of these questions that I've gone through. I'm going to start with this one, is specifically about characters and their spells failing. So I find that when my character players try to use a spell, they expect something to happen sometimes when there is no actual spell effect there. And so I like to use the rule of cool and make sure that something happens. But how do I make it still cool while having them accept that, hey, the spell didn't actually work the way that you thought it would?
I know exactly what you mean, and that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So give me an example.
Pretty good example here is they were fighting a chimera, and the druid put up a wall of fire directly on the chimera, dealing damage.
Okay.
So the ranger, who's an air genasi, decided it would be a good idea to place the wall of air on or directly beside the wall of fire. Now, it became a large argument in the group, and everybody started kind of telling the ranger what to do, and so to speak. So I want to let him do what he wants to do and have everybody else not be like playing his character for him. But if it doesn't work the way that it does, it worked this time, but if it doesn't, how can I, like, if that wasn't to work, so to speak, like if it was to put the fire out, how could I put that situation politely to him and have him be like, oh, well, it still did something, but it didn't work the way that I wanted it to.
Okay. So what did they want to accomplish?
I don't know exactly what they wanted to accomplish with the wall of air, but clearly they wanted to take this beast down.
Okay. So what I would do in that situation, if they don't tell you explicitly or if they don't ask, like, hey, I want this to happen, then just do do whatever sounds cool in your head. So in that specific example, what I would do is druid drops a wall of fire. The ranger follows up with a wall of air. As soon as they cast wall of air and they tell me as the DM, hey, I'm going to put it next to the wall of fire, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to think about like how what would be a cool interaction there. So I would just tell them like, okay, here's what happens. When you drop the wall of air, it expands the wall of fire. Like your wall of air basically just turns into another wall of fire. Like it sucks up the fire and like just like that's a really cool thing. And it like expand like it's a spell interaction. And you could use that in the future. That creates an opportunity for the players to synchronize their spells. And they can like experiment because they have no idea. That's not in the rules. You just made that up. So that gives the players an opportunity to synchronize their spells. Like, oh, I wonder what would happen if we did this. And then you as the DM be like, hey, you know what would be cool if this happens. So just like choose the coolest option. So the wall of fire expands.
And now another one being
sure.
Like an example being they try and shoot fire up against a completely immune enemy. How do I explain that without them being like, oh, this sucks, I just wasted a really good spell? You know, is there any way to do that? Or is it basically like, too bad, that's how it is?
That one is a too bad, that's how it is. But learning an immunity is not a waste of a spell, in my opinion. So if they shoot a fire spell, all right, the first thing you want to do so they don't waste resources, is to give them the opportunity to find out themselves. Give them a skill roll. If they're up against a fire elemental, which is obviously immune to fire, but we'll just say if we're up against creature A that is immune to fire, before or during combat, even say, okay, roll me a history, roll me a religion, roll me an arcana, and then set the DC for that monster. And then you can tell, if they pass, you can tell them they're immune to fire. That saves them a spell. That's a skill check that saves them a spell slot. If they fail that skill, then putting wasting in quotes, wasting that spell is justified because they failed a skill check. Now they have to cast the spell, burn the spell slot, drop the fireball on the monster, and then they learn. So what I would do is I would just say, okay, your fireball goes off, describe it. The monster appears immune to the damage. Just say that, drop that line. So now, okay, even though it's a wasted spell, they still learned new information.
Okay. We're going to go on to a different question at this point.
Sure.
When you were talking about one of your shorts, the Planetar Angel, that came into mind. You said it's a good protector of holy areas.
Okay.
How could I implement this being to appear, I guess, in danger, maybe captured? Like, what could I do to provide this yet still point towards, like, he's really powerful? I've never implemented any celestial beings except for a unicorn into my games, so I'm still new to the celestial sides.
Honestly, you could put them in there however you want. They could you could just say they were captured by goblins. If you wanted an explanation, the goblins found some rare artifact that binds celestial. Like they found. So whatever monster you have in mind, goblins, for example. Well, I'm just using them as an extreme example because they're weak and they just couldn't take a planetar. But they find some ancient manacles that can shackle a celestial, and then they expend it. And it doesn't have to be recent, but it just gets expended. They shackle a planetar, and now they're trying to figure out what to do with this planet now that they've shackled it. And the manacles are useless now. Once you free the planetar, they're broken. And then there you go. So you can do that with literally any monster, like just anything. You could shackle that thing to anything.
Yeah. I'm working in a world where I'm introducing elder elementals. So the water, the Leviathan, the Phoenix, and whatnot. What would you say an evil counterpart to Earth and Air would be?
Fire and water.
What if they're all good? Fire, water, earth, and air.
An evil counterpart to, well, just an evil version of. You're saying all of them are good?
The prime elements are all good, so I'm trying to find the evil one for all of the prime ones. I just don't feel like the flavor of an evil water Leviathan kind of. It seems a little basic to me.
Sure.
But, so what I've implemented in one of them is like there's the sand Leviathan. So I'm trying to think of other options, like other elemental combinations that I could mix up for each of the 4 elements.
Okay. And you said you're trying to find a villain for air and earth?
And earth.
Okay. Chat's got a really good solution. Pollution.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
You remember Fern Gully?
I'm on the live chat right now. It's muted.
You remember Fern Gully? I can't remember the villain's name.
I do remember Fern Gully. Yeah, that's a good option, is pollution. That would be good.
There you go.
We can move on to some more questions because I have a couple more.
Okay.
Can you give me any good ways to make towns described more diverse or readily available or not available for things? I've usually done things like there's a small camp with it seems to be low living circumstances. They can find certain items there, but It's either squalid or not squalid. I'm not finding a better way to describe towns and cities.
Are you pre-writing the descriptions or are you doing them mid-session?
Some of them are pre-written, some of them are mid-session, as they tend to go off train sometimes.
Okay. The best thing, so read novels, read fantasy novels, see how they describe, how they paint pictures in your head. I would even check there's a ton of resources. There's websites that have specific descriptions for towns. You could just modify those. Modules have descriptions that you snatch them up and change them. There's a website called Describe, not sponsored yet, that has pre-written descriptions for spells, monsters, everything. And read novels, see how writers actually describe things, and then just write them down, and then you got it. Boom. You can just make changes. Read Game of Thrones and see how they describe Winterfell or King's Landing. Okay. And then you can say, okay, this is how that's described, but my town doesn't have this, so I just scratch that out, change the name, change that. Boom.
Okay. How would you help your party as the dungeon master travel a long distance in a short amount of time when they feel I've given them an option, but a couple of them still feel that it's not the option. How can I give them another option to travel far with less time? I've given them a teleportation choice, but they're telling me that they need to know where their portal is. So says the spell, but as the DM, I'm able to flavor change things. I'm trying to find a way that doesn't seem too broken.
My favorite way is kind of like fast travel in video games, where if you go to a new town, like a major city, I assume major cities have teleportation circles. So as soon as they find a teleportation circle, they can jot down the coordinates, and now they have access. So as long as they're at a teleportation circle, they can teleport to any other one. That's my go-to. Go ahead.
They are going to a place they've never gone before.
And you want to teleport them to this new place?
I want them to attempt a teleportation and then get teleported inside the place. But I don't want them to feel like it's broken. I want them to feel like, oh, this was given to them maybe by the planetar that is stuck there. I'm thinking of ways to implement that.
You want to teleport them to this. Can you rephrase the question?
Basically, they've been given a time limit on getting to a place where something bad is coming to them. They can see this bad thing coming at them, and they're trying to intercept this and get in there and restore the life force in this place. They've been given a 3-day travel time, but they've been given an 8-hour time limit. And so I'm trying to make them think of ways to get there within an 8-hour time limit and let their brains work. But I don't want them to overthink and go, it's hopeless, let's just quit, because they're level 9. It doesn't make sense.
They don't have a whole lot of options. A really fast flyer. What's the fastest flyer? Griffin? A really fast flying mount. Teleportation. You could have a puzzle behind. So I described the teleportation circle. You could put a puzzle behind the teleportation circle coordinates.
I like that. Okay.
All right, there you go.
That is a good one to add. Thank you. Going to the Shadowfell. What kind of challenge rating would 6 level 9s be facing?
Whatever
for
you want.
One enemy that does a lot of damage. A vampire CR 13, I believe, is it not?
Yeah, 13 sounds right. 12?
So
around there.
What level would a vampire be fighting players at?
Whatever level you want. I would ignore CR. If you want your players to fight something high level, give them temporary magic items, give them scrolls and potions. If you want them fighting something weaker, make it stronger. If you want your level 20 party to fight a goblin, give the goblin a mech suit and a bunch of powerful minions. If you want them to fight a red, if you want your level 1 party to fight a red dragon, chain that red dragon to a wall to where it can't do anything. Its breath weapon is like it's choked, so it can't use its breath weapon. All it can do is claw. Like just change it. Just change the stat blocks. You said they're in the Shadowfell? Man, a shadow goblin sounds cool. A shadow kobold. You just put the word shadow in front of your favorite monster in the monster manual, and you've got a Shadowfell version of it.
Do you have any material or any ideas that I can implement for the environment of the Shadowfell to give them, like besides it being dark and shadowy? There's the basic description in D&D, but I'm wondering if you have anything else to add.
My go-to, so find versions of the Shadowfell that you like. My favorite is Stranger Things, the Upside Down. That's kind of like my Shadowfell. I usually pull descriptions from that. I don't have a whole lot of resources from official sources for the Shadowfell, but just like before, look stuff up, look up descriptions for the Shadowfell. That would be my go-to. Would be have a clear image in your head of what the Shadowfell looks like, and then you could pull from some like really gothic dark fan. Dark Souls, the Upside Down. I'm kind of blanking, but there's plenty of games.
I think I know what you're talking about. I will look into
Limbo.
that.
Limbo is basically the Shadowfell.
I have one more question for you.
One more.
When you were talking about the puppet sessions, do you use a program online, or do you do all of that by rolling yourself?
Puppet session. Oh, the mock
session. Yes.
So if you have access to the, so I just do that roll. If I do that, it would be through Roll20. I would just grab their tokens and then, roll the dice. I don't really go through like on this turn they do this, on this turn they do this. I will if I have to. I would literally, okay, it's my turn. Here's what I have access to. I'm going to do this. Like literally just turn by turn play through it. You don't really have to go that far. If you just know how much damage they're capable of doing and what spells they like, that should be fine. Just write down like, oh, this guy is capable of doing 60 points of damage in a turn. Rogue can do 100. So it looks like they could pump out 230 points of damage in a round. So I need that much hit points across my, so spread out my monsters, like that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You have a good one. Thank you for the content.
Too. Bye.
That was fun. Bloodborne. Oh, yeah. Great suggestion. Bloodborne.